Today, our keynote speaker is Council Member Mark Ridley Thomas. Mark was first elected to public office in 1991. He served on the City Council for the 8th District for almost 10 years. He then went on to serve 2 terms in the California State Assembly, where he chaired the Jobs, Economic Development, and Economy Committees and chaired the Assembly Democratic Caucus. He went on to represent the 26th District in the California State Senate, the seat that Sidney Camargo holds right now, where he chaired the Senate Committee on Business, Professions, and Economic Development. While he served in the Senate, he was chair of the California Legislative Black Caucus, and in 2008 led the caucus in unprecedented levels of cooperation and collaboration with their counterparts in the Latino and Asian Pacific Islander legislative caucuses. In 2008, he was elected to the LA County Board of Supervisors, where he served as a 2nd District Supervisor for 3 terms. He was turned out and wanted to continue his public service and did so by running for the office and then being elected to the 10th District seat on the City Council, where he currently serves. And one of the issues that he has made a major part of his tenure for these next 3+ years is homelessness. And we do have a video that we want to share to you.
The Leimert Park Village has long been a center for Afrocentric culture and commerce. But for far too long, it had become a place where too many of our unhoused neighbors laid their heads on the sidewalk at night. They were among more than 40,000 Angelenos experiencing homelessness across our city. When I took office, we knew that these men and women in Leimert Park had fallen on hard and difficult times, and it would take dedicated street engagement coupled with housing opportunities to make a difference in the village. On day 1 in office, I made this a priority. I worked in partnership with Hopix to deploy an outreach team that would be dedicated to the village to begin this work.
So at the beginning of this year, we did a 2-part series on combating homelessness. The first person we thought to call was Councilmember Ridley Thomas from CD10. We know that he has a long history of assisting the unhoused, so we were excited to have him come and work with us. African Americans make up 8 to 10% of the population in Los Angeles, but yet we're 33% of the unhoused. So we felt as a community, we needed to come together to see what we could do to combat this. It's just a challenge for the village to come to full fruition when we have so much homelessness impacting the area. So we recognize that the first step is getting the unhoused into homes. After that, we can move on to the other growth that we want to see here in the village. But the first step is we have to help the people. And we're excited that Councilmember Ridley Thomas have managed to house 75 previously unhoused people.
Thankfully, the first week of January, they called me and said they had a place for me. Because it was for about at least almost close to 6 months, if not more, I was on the street. The burden of not knowing where I'm gonna be, lay my head is off my shoulder. And I feel like this is like a step in a good direction to where I feel like it's gonna help me. Now I don't have to worry about that. Now I can focus on getting a job and saving money and doing other things.
Every man, woman, and child in our city deserves a place to call home. Our work is not done. Outreach workers continue to visit the village on a regular basis, sometimes daily. And the team from Hopix will work with their clients to stay housed and get the services they need to thrive.
Having the opportunity that Mark Ridley Thomas gave us to actually take people straight from the street and get them into their own apartment. And when we say own apartment, I mean their own door. They can lock the key. They have their own bathroom, they have their own kitchen, they have their own apartment. So it's not somewhere where we're just shuffling people into somewhere. They actually have the time to work on their programs and their dignity and get right back into society like where they belong.
She's been on the street for the majority of her life. So she's currently working at Target. She said she's never going to give up. She's going to keep going. She's going to keep fighting. And her mother, she's finally able to tell her mama that she's housed and she loves her mother. She loves her mother. Her mother is happy now. So she sees her mom off and her mom is happy for her. She's so happy.
But this work is a striking reminder that we can end homelessness in Los Angeles as we know it. It just requires us dedicating the resources and the attention to make a difference. One tent, one encampment at a time. It requires us not accepting that any of our neighbors have a right to a park bench, but rather they have a right to a roof, to a door, to a bed. They have a right to housing.
Okay, and at this time, I'd like to welcome 10th District Councilman Mark Ridley Thomas. I've known Mark since the 90s. When I was downtown and he was a city councilman, I was legislative aide, and we've been good friends over the years. He's done wonderful work throughout Los Angeles County and continues to, and I'm absolutely certain will continue to here. So, Mark, I am going to turn it over to you for your presentation. There he is.
Thank you very much, Armin. Good afternoon to the members of the Crenshaw Chamber. Pleased to be here. I want to cut right into my remarks. I just prepared a little PowerPoint for you. Take note of team members who are here, Chief Deputy Carly Katona, Deputy for Legislation and Civic Engagement is here, Kayla Tilton. Carly, who else is on? I'm not seeing everybody.
I think Ibert is on as well.
Ibert, Schultz.
And
So
Jordanis might be on as well.
There's Ibert, and Jordanis is on as well. So we brought the team into the room for the chambers because you deserve the best of what we have, and these who you see are the best of the best. The focus of my remarks today are on the following topics, and I think you'll have quite a bit of interest in these issues. The first of which is the changes occurring in Leimert Park Village and the Crenshaw Quarter. I want to talk about the homeless crisis. Then I want to talk about redistricting. Those three areas are what I want to speak to. I was driven to public service based on my belief that the status quo as we understand it, especially in communities of color, just didn't do what we deserve having done. Not acceptable. And I have to say to you, my belief is that the public sector is uniquely suited to drive and define effective community change. And I'm all about that. And particularly when we think about the language of equity and the redistribution of resources in the public sector, particularly the city of Los Angeles, we need to go after it. Therefore, let's look at Leimert Park, an area focus for the team over the past year has been the village. And as many of you know, the village is the center of Afrocentric culture and commerce in the city of Los Angeles. We call it an asset. But for too long, it has not lived up to that potential, and now is the time that we can help it do that. So we've organized a robust team to tackle the variety of issues impacting the village. And let me just say what those issues are. It's of interest to the chamber. One is infrastructure improvements. Two is reestablishing the business improvement district. Three is setting a new standard for community events and civic engagement, and finally, engaging in interventionist strategies so that public safety is supported at an indigenous and community-based method of work. And we're just getting started, but we're doing very nicely. We're now regularly convening all the relevant city departments to discuss immediate and longer term improvements, particularly as it relates to infrastructure improvements and addressing illegal vending and better utilizing the parking lots. Those are city assets, and we need to cause them to be an asset in a real sense. I think it's fair to say we're driven by the need to get back to the basics and to better support the businesses and stakeholders in the village. And to do so, sometimes you've got to get down to what Armin would call the nitty gritty. No way to get around that. The business is the business, and we're all about it. So as I said earlier, my office is supporting the reestablishment of the greater Leimert Park Crenshaw Corridor Business Improvement District. That's an important piece of the work. We see the bid as having significant potential to augment city services to support not just the cleanliness and safety of the village, but more proactively support, market, and showcase all that is going on in Leimert Park Village. And there's a lot going on. Over the past few months alone, we sponsored Juneteenth. And we opened up the park for the first time in 3 years right there on Juneteenth, the first time it was designated as a national holiday. And then we had a movie in the park, Space Jam 2, and everybody had a good time. You see images of that on the screen. Then we had the drumming celebration, the Bantaba, very special. And we followed that with Tech Leimert Park Conference. And so from technology to drumming culture to reaching to kids and those who were once kids in a movie format, and then the celebration of freedom, liberation, and the like of African Americans through Juneteenth. Now, that's just some of the events. We'll do more. And I believe it's our responsibility to ensure that the village lives up to its true potential, and it is on its way, as you can see in these remarks. Let me say a word about Crenshaw Corridor, if you would. So adjacent to Leimert Park is, of course, the corridor, an area that everybody on the call is familiar with. And as you all know, the corridor is rapidly changing between the village on the south and the 10 freeway on the north. And we're seeing the production of housing and jobs, including quite a few projects being entitled for permanent supportive housing and under the transit-oriented communities program. And so the MTA is moving an agenda that is having far-reaching impacts on our community. So between the year 2014 all the way up to 2021, 14 major projects were approved by the city on the corridor. So in summary, a total of 191,000 square feet of commercial and office space and 2,609 housing units are either completed or underway on the corridor. There's a lot of activity on the corridor. It means amenities, it means jobs, it means the elevation of the quality of life of the people who call the Crenshaw district their home. Now, 291 units, or approximately 11% of all of the housing being developed, has affordable restricted covenants. Real important. Affordability is very important to us. And so there's a lot going on, and many of these projects are happening with the appropriate permits. But it's our opportunity and our responsibility to ensure that the right development for the community takes place. And we'll do that by continuing to set an expectation for mixed income units and for working as hard as we can with developers to bring quality amenities to the neighborhood. So the corridor is coming back. It needs to come back because it took a pretty hard hit with the exit of the car dealerships and a range of other commercial entities. Crenshaw was suffering. And I believe that the Metro line will bring about a level of energy. That's a huge investment, $2.2 billion along the entire route. And so we have much to look forward to. And I think the Crenshaw Chamber is fully aware and actively engaged in that. And we want to continue to partner with you on that. May I say a word about homelessness? It's promising to see affordable housing being built on the corridor. It's simply not enough to address our twin affordable housing and homelessness crisis. Good things are happening, but not enough good things are happening to keep up with this homeless crisis. You see the data on the screen there. And I'd be remiss if I didn't spend a moment saying what this crisis entails. It is my number one priority. I intend to lean in on this issue. Everyone pretty well knows how hard I worked on homelessness when I was on the Board of Supervisors. I will tell you that I'm working even harder as a member of the City Council, and I intend to continue to do that. There is no greater challenge facing this city. May I make it plain? It is as follows. You see it. Every day on average, we transition 207 people off the streets, take them out of the jaws of homelessness, as it were. But every single day, likewise, 227 people are snatched into homelessness. 227. Do the math. Do the math. We're taking on water. We're behind here. The majority of the unhoused have gotten there due to economic circumstances. Far too many cannot afford to live in Los Angeles. People say it's mental health. People say it's substance use. That constitutes somewhere between 30 and 40% of the homeless population. The balance is economic issues, food insecurity, the lack of capacity to pay rent, the lack of purchasing power, lack of employment opportunities that conspire to drive homelessness. Add to that the pandemic. The pandemic had a disastrous impact on the homeless population across the nation, uptick of some 40% in homelessness, according to Columbia University. It's overwhelming in many respects. Not 40% uptick in California, not in Los Angeles, but surely somewhere in the area north of 15%, which we can see and feel on our streets and in our community. I just have to say, data has shown that homelessness is real as it affects African American and Latino residents at a rate of 3 to 1. Take that in for a moment. Black population in particular, 9% of the population of the city as a whole is Black. North of 35% of the homeless population in the city of Los Angeles is Black. That's the language of disproportionality. If you look at it in its totality, some 70% of those on our streets are people of color. So if we really want to see a change on the street, it will require a different kind of commitment. Creating more affordable housing. If you want to cure homelessness, if you want to cure houselessness, you got to provide housing. It's just that simple. There's no better solution. But not housing alone, housing with services. And we don't deny the fact that persons with substance use issues, persons with mental health issues need supports. They have to be case managed. So in Los Angeles, 1 out of 10 people who qualify for a federal voucher receive it, but that just won't cut it. The standard is 1 out of 4, not 1 out of 10, but 1 out of 4 is what happens in other parts of the country. Los Angeles has to do better. So there's just simply no getting around the fact that we need a different type of government intervention to prevent this crisis from compounding itself, from exacerbating other problems in our communities. And my focus, plain and simple, is on advancing a right to housing. And I see a right to housing being comprised of 4 fundamental components: prevention, street engagement, interim and supportive and permanent housing, and finally supportive services. Last month we made progress on advancing these pillars on a number of fronts with the adoption of the citywide street engagement strategy. Now you say, well, Mr. Councilman, what is that strategy? Well, it provides a uniform framework to provide street-based services and connections to housing, both interim and permanent, for unsheltered residents living in our city. Now, each council office will now have at least 3 dedicated street engagement teams who will be designed to getting the business handled. And of course, in the 10th district, the mighty 10th district, Mr. Ross, we have been at work since day 1. And I thank you for your support. I thank you for standing with us and doing what we need to do. We're working with our homeless service providers to identify large encampments and focus on the business of helping these individuals come indoors. Ain't nothing good about being on the streets. Anybody who says that service resistance and people prefer being there and so forth, I want to challenge that. When approached in the proper way with the proper supports and so forth, people do come in, and we have a number of examples of that. May I share them with you? In the Leimert Park Village, for an example. And I won't talk about the others that we've been successful at. Just in Leimert Park, in partnership with Hopix, our provider of choice in South LA, we've been able to help more than 75 people transition off the streets through what we call strategic street engagement. And we did it with no law enforcement intervention. Not a single black and white was involved. The work of black and white is typically going to be to do what they know best and they're trained to do, namely arrest, when in fact they confront a problem. They don't have any other real tools. They're not experts in the area of housing navigation, area of diagnosing mental disorders, and having the referral systems at their disposal to help people. So if you put them in jail, you only make it worse, and it costs a lot of money. Add to that, they will be released, and where will they end up? Back in Leimert Park Village. So we have to have a better outcome. And we're proud of what we were able to accomplish with the businesses, with the residents, with the religious community. Everybody kind of organically said, we've got to get at this. And at the end of the day, it all comes down to the availability of long-term housing options that will help ensure that once someone is helped leave the streets, then they can stay housed. You know, this is not about a merry-go-round. This is not about a revolving door. This is about stability. And that's how you deal with homelessness. You stabilize people's lives. So that's why I'm pushing to establish the Housing Now program, which will create 1,000, I should say 10,000 additional rental subsidies to serve the unhoused with serious health and mental health needs. The problem will not solve itself without a different scale of resources that are available. And we need to stop talking about it on the city council and start being about it, doing the work, allocating the resources, and moving from districts 1 through 15 and making the kind of qualitative difference that can be made. And we are actively exploring new revenue scenarios as we speak. But I tell you, moving 207 people off the streets is not bad, but we need to be moving upwards of 300 people to make the kind of difference and see it and feel it in our community. Frankly, I'm counting on the chamber to be thought partners and collaborators as we continue to move forward to advance this issue. This is the moral crisis of our time. Finally, I just want to say a word about redistricting. It's important to spend a few moments about this because many of the social injustices, the systemic inequities, the lack of investment in quote unquote underserved communities that we have to contend with is directly related to historic representation and the lack of adequate resources to leverage to drive up the quality of life. So I want to say representation matters. And we have the opportunity every 10 years to ensure that we don't go backwards from the progress that we have made. The Redistricting Commission has conducted some 17 public hearings since July. They seek to advance a new map for the city councils. Later this month, it will be guided by the need to balance population across the respective council districts across the city and balance the various communities of interest. And based on that input, the commission adopted a map known as K 2.5 and is going through another round of community input. I trust that the chamber will be on point in that connection because I think it's critical that South LA residents make their voices known. And it's been said that there's been a conspicuous absence of voices from our community, the Crenshaw communities and the surrounding communities. And what should we do? Demand compliance with the Voting Rights Act. Do I need to say somebody fought, bled, and died? That we have the right to vote. People are fond of celebrating John Lewis in the daytime, and by the time it's the evening, they're making decisions that don't honor his legacy or the fact that he spilled blood on that Edmund Pettus bridge. So I think we have to ensure that Black voter strength is not diluted in this council, historically represented by African American members, and to take care to promote an equitable distribution of economic assets. I'm essentially wanting to invoke the Hippocratic Oath, ladies and gentlemen, do no harm. And that's how we're guided in the 10th District. Don't allow anybody to harm us, and we are not trying to harm or deplete anyone else's resources. And we see that the map that's been considered by the commission is largely addressing these issues, but we can't be complacent about the process because others are seeking to redefine that, and it could adversely affect the interests of the 10th District. And so although the commission has adopted a draft map, you know, there's a lot of goings on. We've got to be heard. We've got to be heard. We've got to be heard in order to be taken seriously. So we'll put the dates up for your consideration, and I got to encourage you to make sure that you are on top of this. Your stakeholders, and you make a difference. And at that point, the city council will weigh in, as you see, and have the final word on the map. So I just wanted to talk to you about the village, about the crisis, and about the process of representation. I appreciate this opportunity to talk with you, and I look forward to doing more in the future. And I welcome you to keep an eye on my website and reach out to my staff to stay up to date on what's going on in the 10th district. Like I said, there's a lot going on in the 10th Council District in the city of Los Angeles. We're proud of it, and we are open to your questions. Mr. President.
Councilman, thank you very, very much for that very informative presentation. Our Chamber of Commerce will stand with you in the efforts that you're making to ease the homeless crisis in the city of Los Angeles, because, and this was one of the reasons why I welcomed you to speak about homelessness. A lot of people think, well, it's not, they're not affecting the businesses, but they are. And, you know, they're not affecting some people, but it affects everybody. And it affects you as a resident. It affects you as a business owner. It affects you as an employee in a business. And it affects our city. It affects our tourism. And we need to stand with those who are making a stand to do something to try and remedy this situation.
It's an excellent idea, and I'll ask the team to make sure that we dial into HOPIX, which is the nonprofit service provider. We can link them into the work with the city attorney's office with respect to the neighborhood prosecutor program that has a bent toward services as well. The County of Los Angeles has an ID piece as well, and it came through the diversion program there. So there are a number of places to try to put this in place here, and I think we have the capacity to be responsive. You will see more and more on this very front. I'm taking your last question with respect to redistricting. It will come to the chamber. It will come to the community at large in terms of the 3 African American members of the council articulating what our priorities are, helping to understand what the maps look like. We've had meetings in our respective districts, and as we move toward closure over the next 45 days, you will see more of that, and it will intensify. So stay tuned. With respect to the State Department of Rehabilitation, et cetera, the state, the county, and the city have to collaborate in a much more meaningful and substantive way with respect to homelessness in order for us to do this work. I have focused at the state level at the request of the governor to try to figure out how we put those pieces in place. And that's where we focused on a right to housing and a range of other things. Now, the governor has moved forth as much as $12 billion to address the issue of the homeless crisis in the state. The specifics of that relate to housing in large measure. And so we need to more aggressively find our way into that discussion, accessing those resources. And of course, your city council member and your supervisor are places where you should engage, ask those range of questions, and move forward. The city and the county has to do a much better job in terms of collaborating in addition to the state. You can't deal with the homeless crisis in Los Angeles unless you have city and county collaboration. The city handles the land use, the county handles the safety net. Both have to work hand in glove in order to deal with this crisis. And I have to report to you, the city and county haven't done that enough and haven't done that well enough. Therefore, we've got to have the consciousness in the chamber to say, look, the business community is saying, where's the collaboration between the city and county to deal with this? And that has to happen more. And that's in part what the Housing Now Fund is about. Seeking to move forward, replicating the county's Housing for Health program. And so we need to learn from each other rather than standing back fighting and saying that I'm better than you are and you need to do as I say and so forth. The city and the county have to do better. Now, I have the unique position of having served in both contexts, well, all three, but more specifically, city and county. And I know of what I speak in terms of trying to urge more attention toward collaboration. Now, Carly, there were a few other questions that were posed. Mr. President, I don't know if you're going to let Laura soak up all the time.
No, I'm not going to let her soak up all the time. And Laura can do that. She's a very inquisitive,
I
very
got that
smart,
impression.
great businesswoman.
I got that impression, and I appreciated the questions. We are ready to answer them. I didn't know if you wanted me to unleash the whole team right now to answer. We can do it later with Laura if you like.
Okay.
And that's why we need to have teams of people who we can rely on to help us know what to do and what not to do. Mary and Kamani, when they come to speak with you, can make the appropriate connection with Hopix, and there will be a reach out to that individual and see if we can help him come indoors. The idea is to come indoors.
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, the idea is not to give a blanket unless that blanket is on a bed with a roof
Right.
and a door. And so that's what we're really trying to work our way up to, and we can do this. We need to have clarity of focus in doing those. So, Ms. Blair, those are excellent questions and excellent comments. And Carly, I think you want to weigh in.
So yeah, I just want to also mention, I'll add to the chat the website called the LA Homeless Outreach Portal. And you can use that website to log in information about individuals that you see that are unhoused. And that will go directly in South Los Angeles to Hopix to make sure that they work with our team to get folks out there. But we want to make sure that that information is logged and that we have the ability to be accountable in tracking it. So I'll put that information into the chat for everyone to see moving forward.
I just want to add that reaching out to Kamani Black is the best thing that you can possibly do. He is very, very responsive to any inquiries that are made from residents of the 10th District. And Mary is an invaluable portion of piece of the staff also. Now, anybody else? Lisa Fitch, and let's go with Lisa first and then Felix.
Thank you. Councilman, I'm concerned, I'm wondering, every time I pass by Lamert Park, the park itself, sometimes it seems to be gated. Is there a gating policy or?
Ibert, you want to give a response?
Well, I think one of the challenges we saw with the park and looking to reopen it was we wanted to make sure that it stayed clean, that it stayed safe, and it stayed a place for families can engage on. But as it relates to the park, we worked with in the community individuals that help to kind of keep this park active and keep it clean. And that's called Second Call. And they've been helpful in opening up the park at 9 a.m. And then closing it around 5 p.m., I believe, 5 or 6 p.m., excuse me. So that we aren't dealing with issues of the deterioration in quality. So that's probably what you're seeing as it relates to the gates being closed.
Okay.
Two things. One, Carly's going to answer part B. Part A, just know that we are very strong in terms of our eviction defense efforts and funding in the 10th Council District. The legal aid has benefited from our resources, and that will cover parts of the Crenshaw District as well. And so when I talked about prevention as a part of the right to housing, eviction defense is a strong component of that as a way to check homelessness. Carly, on the question of affordability, please.
Sure. So Felice, what we look at is the median income of the community. It's called the AMI, or average median income. And then usually we measure affordable housing as individuals or households that make between 30 and 80% of area median income. And so oftentimes in the council member reference that there were about just under 300 units along Crenshaw that had different affordable income restrictions. And some of those are, and we can get you the specific data within the subgroups, but some of those units are specifically for people that are extremely low income, which is around 30% AMI or area median income, and then it goes up to low income and moderate income. So there's a very technical mathematical way of calculating who falls under those low income requirements. That's done based on the general income of the area. So again, we have to look at the what is the median number, and then what 30%, or it depends. There's the different iterations of that. So Felice, I'm happy to talk to you offline and to sort of walk you through this in more detail. But what I would generally say is something that we are concerned about is that there generally is there's not enough, but there is subsidy and programs to help people that are at extremely low income levels. But what there isn't enough of is a supply of housing for what we call the missing middle, and individuals, working class individuals who are being displaced in other communities where we see rents rising. And that's an area that we're also very concerned about. We want to make sure that there isn't displacement and that individuals that are making that sort of modern income still have a place to live in Los Angeles, and particularly in CD10.
Question, and Jordanis is on the call, teed up to answer that. So Jordanis, take it away.
Hello, good afternoon. The council member sees bioscience as the economic opportunity to be able to afford a residents good paying, well-paying, family-sustaining wages. So it's definitely a priority for our office. We had the opening of Bioscience LA yesterday, and a number of programs that we have for workforce through our office.
Jordanos Gavatarios, you can answer any and all of those questions. And we are thinking about something special at Malton School. This is not an abstraction for us. I think just the other day we moved through committee with the idea of teeing it up and moving as close as possible to an RFP. And if all things go well over the next month, you'll see that on the streets, and you can find the details on our website as soon as we clear the balance of the work that has to happen on the county. There's a piece, not the county, but at the city, and there's a piece a business that the state has to give us permission on, but we are intent on it. All that vacant, unused land right in front of the Kaiser medical facility can be a very nice biotech park. So lots going on, and Yadanos can fill in the blanks on how much more is going on, and you can go to our website and learn quite a bit about it. The 10th Council District is, in fact, a small business friendly office. We take that point of view seriously. It's in part why I'm here talking with the chamber, and take us at our word. We will lead, we will guide in terms of the work that can and should be done. And there are links with the County of Los Angeles as well. At the height of the pandemic, we rolled out quite a bit of in the way of resources that came from the federal government, and we have to do more. What we have had to work with is simply insufficient. But I'm not one to hide the ball. I think government can and should do more in partnership with the private sector, and I'm all about that.
Thank you so much, Councilman. And that's going to close out this portion of the meeting. Councilman, we really appreciate you spending an hour of your day this Thursday with us and bringing all the top brass in the CD10 office. With you. Carly, it's always a pleasure seeing you. Always. We appreciate it very, very much. You've made this a memorable meeting for the chamber, for our members and friends and guests who attended this meeting with us. It is the most well-attended meeting we've had all year. Thank you very, very much.